Stunning news out of Washington. President Trump revokes the security clearance of former CIA Director John Brennan. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders reading a statement from the president explaining why.
Any benefits that senior officials might glean from consultations with Mr. Brennan are now outweighed by the risks posed by his erratic conduct and behavior. Mr. Brennan's line and recent conduct, characterized by increasingly frenzied commentary, is wholly inconsistent with access to the nation's most closely held secrets and facilities, the very aim of our adversaries, which is to sow division and chaos.
Brennan, the now MSNBC contributor, is a constant critic of President Trump. Here he is just last night.
I think Donald Trump has badly sullied the reputation of the office of the presidency with his invective, with his constant disregard, I think, for human decency, as well as his befriending of autocratic leaders around the world, and his continued pursuit of relationships to benefit himself as opposed to the country. I do think that America's standing in the world has also been tarnished. But I think even more fundamentally, what he is doing here in the United States is very polarizing, and he is, I think, the most divisive president we've ever had in the Oval Office.
Fresh reaction from John Brennan on Twitter, quote, "This action is part of a broader effort by Mr. Trump to suppress freedom of speech and punish critics. It should gravely worry all Americans, including intelligence professionals, about the cost of speaking out. My principles are worth far more than clearances. I will not relent." The White House is also now reviewing security clearances of top former intelligence officials and FBI employees, including James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Susan Rice, Peter Strzok, and James Clapper. All right, Judge Jeanine, I know you've been following this Brennan situation very closely. They say these people retain their clearances to consult with their successors. I don't think he's doing any consultation now. And just as a professional courtesy, do you believe he has forfeited his professional courtesy by the frenzied rhetoric that he's been exhibiting on cable TV and on Twitter?
Well, he certainly has been engaging in a lot of frenzied behavior and criticism. But here's the bottom line. You're not entitled to a security clearance. You don't have a right to have it. The president has the arbitrary right to take it away. How many people do we know whether or not they have it or don't have it? When does it sunset? And here's a guy who's lied to Congress 1,000,000 times. That's an exaggeration. But, he denied the CIA that he was running improperly accessed computer files of the Senate. It's all in my book, which we'll talk about later.
She beat you to the punch.
Yeah, she beat you to the punch.
She's good.
But here's the thing. Look, the guy is, he is this truth to power nonsense that you need to be able to have this. It's really for an institutional reference. Pompeo ain't calling this guy.
Right.
So why does he need it? And you know what? I have no problem with it. They're not entitled to it.
All right, so Juan, Judge Jeanine brought up one of the issues at stake with the fact that he lied about spying on Senate staffers. He also lied to Congress when he says, we don't listen to Americans' phone calls in bulk. And he also lied about the use of the dossier, said it wasn't really considered in the intelligence assessment, which it was. So 3 things there alone, the guy proffering false information to Congress and to the American people. He doesn't have a great track record when it comes to honesty.
I think he has a great track record, and I think he's a patriot. I tell you, to me, I don't understand why Michael Flynn's not on that list. You have any idea why Mike Flynn's not on that list?
Well, I think we know, Juan.
Oh, I see.
No, I
so
have
Mike
an answer.
Flynn, any Republican, not on the list. What you think about it,
Comey's
Jesse,
on the list. Is he still a Republican? He
Comey
claims
doesn't
he is.
even have clearance, so that's not necessary. This, again, he puts Comey, he puts McCabe. They don't even have clearance, but he puts them on the list because it essentially, and you hear this now from the Democrats, he's created an enemies list. So he attacks the press as the enemy of the American people. He attacks his critics. He makes people who work for him sign non-disclosure agreements, host transparency, And then, of course, he's trying to now politicize intelligence gathering. He does not consult with Jim Clapper, his own director of national intelligence, about this move. So to me, this is like so sad and so authoritarian, and yet I suppose all his supporters will just say, big deal.
I think you meant Coates.
Dan Coates.
Yeah.
Dana, is this rare? I mean, has this ever happened before?
I think it's not an exaggeration to say it's unprecedented. But as the judge says, the president does have the right to make this decision. But I look at it as this way: why today? Well, how do you solve a problem like Omarosa? By having something to lead with today. This document is actually dated July 26th. They didn't change that today when they released it. So they've been holding on to it. Maybe because of Brennan's comments last night on MSNBC, they decided that was just the last straw, and they decided to move forward. But it did provide the White House a way to pivot to the story that they want to talk about of the day, and that is this issue. It's very clever, the use of the word erratic, because that's not just a word that they pick out of thin air. Erratic is one of the words that you're asked about when you are going through a clearance, or when your friends and colleagues or your former work associates, they'll be asked, did you ever see Jesse exhibit erratic behavior? Because that would be a tell that there might be something wrong with them and they would not be able to deal with that. I do think it looks a little bit like political retaliation, but the president has the ability to do it, so if he wants to do it, fine. I just don't think it actually does anything beyond this news cycle, because John Brennan's not going to stop talking. He's not even using his security clearance anyway.
All right. Greg, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back, Jesse. Your hair is as big as ever.
You've been missed on your book tour. What do you think about this latest clearance revoking?
Well, I think when people say this is unprecedented, that doesn't matter anymore, because everything since 2016 is unprecedented. And so when you have complaints about behavior, emotional behavior, Brennan's criticisms of Trump are also pointless, because we've been through that. He still won. You can still think he's a jerk. He still beat the pants off you, so get over it. So there are two big reasons here. Brennan is just another person who was broken by 2016. He's like the reverse version of the movie Big. Instead of a child becoming a man, he is transformed from a man to a petulant child by some supernatural, surreal event, which was the 2016 election. This has happened to a lot of people. He's fallen, and he can't get up.
You think this is Trump derangements?
Absolutely. And also, the second reason is, and why his opinion means nothing to me, is back in the 80s, at the height of the Cold War, Brennan voted for a communist in the freest country we have ever seen. He has no standing to be critical about any Russian meddling or any kind of Russian policy, because he didn't just collude, he cheerled. He cheerled at a time when we really needed people there to fight and to be an anti-communist. So the fact that he got this far is astounding. I look forward to his book, because I know there will be one. And the other thing about this, I understand the idea of pivoting, but in Trump world, news is bocce ball.
Yep.
So a ball comes, a ball will be Omarosa, and the next ball will be Brennan. But the fact is, you can't tell the difference between that being pivoting or just being another day.
Oh, actually,
because there's news every day.
But I also think it's quite strategic.
Yeah.
I mean, like, my hats off to them.
I think they would do it every day. I think they do this every day.
You do. Like, you wake up every day thinking you want to be proactive, and then end up having to react to things.
Proactive. It's really good for the skin.
Brennan, last night, in the clip that we saw here, he's reacting to Trump calling Omarosa a dog. And then, so what Brennan says is that he's failed to live up, the president has failed to live up to minimum standards of decency. It's disheartening and dangerous for a president to behave in that way for our nation.
How dangerous, though?
How dangerous, how ugly, how disheartening.
Words.
I think Brennan's right on target.
But you know what the problem is, Juan? The problem is that you've got Brennan and Clapper, the people who lied to Congress, who anyone else, would be in jail right now. But these are the guys who are monetizing and politicizing. These are the guys who are actually going on television. And if you don't think that security clearance adds to their ability to be lobbyists and consultants and advisors, it's huge. They're monetizing it. Michael Flynn is not. The guy's hiding somewhere.
Right, but I don't think it's monetizing to say that he was the CIA director. He was.
How did he get on MSNBC with his good looks?
He was the CIA director.
There you go.
But Clapper got on CNN because he lied and said he never leaked anything. Then we find out he leaked something to CNN, and then he's now getting a check from CNN.
Well, let me just say, you have 4 million people, Judge, who have security clearance in the country. I think it's 1 million plus who have top secret clearance.
1.3 million.
Right, so these guys aren't monetizing. mean, these guys are experienced.
Yeah, that's why they still have.
We need to build a wall.
Yeah, that's
what.
We need to build a wall. Or get around the people with clearances.
I think what they're doing, he's leveraging his clearance in order to gain credibility when he goes on television and makes these really outrageous statements. Some of these statements, he says the President of the United States is a danger to national security. He suggested Trump met one-on-one with Vladimir Putin because he was hiding something from his own security team. He says the president has no credibility, and he says he is a Ponzi scheme artist, comparing him to Bernie Madoff. And he said this is all going to catch up with him, kind of making these veiled threats like, oh, your day is going to come,
he doesn't
Mr.
even
President.
need a security clearance, right? So it's like it doesn't necessarily matter. Now that he has the reputation he has, now that he's done what he's done, he will always be able to be on television. He'll always be able to write books. So, like, that is not. This doesn't change that for him. But I do think it is professionally embarrassing.
But you know what? Most Americans agree with what you said Brennan believes, which is that Trump is lying about his relations with Russia and that Trump's not honest. Yeah, that's what
surveys show that Americans are not the least bit interested in the Russian story.
Yeah, they all
and you have to be very skeptical of somebody this emotional. Brennan is an emotional wreck right now. You can't. There's something going on in his head that's not right.
He's erratic.
He's erratic.
He's erratic.
That's right.